Hey, welcome back to the Motorcyclist Podcast. This is where we talk about motorcycles and what makes them great. Topics on this show constantly change, but the one thing that remains the same is two-wheel fun. I'm Justin Dodds, executive editor. We've got editor Adam Wahid, and we've got photo director Jeff Allen in for this one. Today we are going to talk about the GSX-R750, Suzuki's 40-year long-running. Used to be a super bike, now it's a mid-size bike, but still races super bike. It's this bike that kind of sits in this weird space, which Suzuki likes to do, as we talked about with the DRZ in one of the last episodes. So, it's Suzuki's OG Repli racer. Like it is one of the first faired Repli racers you could buy from the showroom floor. It's been around for 40 years. This year.
Yikes.
It was introduced 41 years ago, but it's been around for 40 years.
Does hearing that it's 40 years old, does it make anyone else feel kind of old? 40 years?
Dude, I feel old every time I get up out of a chair. My knees remind me that I'm old. Not that this stuff on my face doesn't remind me that I'm old. I think Adam Wahid has dyed his hair maybe or something. On the top
for
of
sure.
His head.
It's dyed. Yeah, I stuck my head in a tar pit. And just sat there for 2 hours.
Perfect.
Is the tar pit what makes it stand up like that?
It looks just as good as a 85 GSX-R750.
That's from not showering in a week.
Oh,
good thing you guys aren't sitting next to me.
Would you sleep upside down? Was it just like...
the benefits of working from home?
Yeah.
Anyway, the GSX-R750 has not been changed since 2011. Same exact bike. So we're going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about why is it such a long-running sport bike? Why has it not changed in so many years? And why is it such a good choice for sport bike riders, especially right now? So let's get started with some of the history. Does anyone know when and where it was introduced?
It was introduced in '84 I think it was at the Cologne Motor Show, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
As an '85 model.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was built to resemble the World Endurance bike, 24 hours of Le Mans and stuff like that bike, Suzuki 8-hour race bike. So it's the first Repli racer. There was other faired sport bikes before that. Most notable being the BMW, I think it was R100 in the 70s. Maybe it's an R80. I don't know, but the BMW had a faired sport bike long before this. But this was one of the first Repli racers.
Because I think wasn't the RG 500 Gamma, the two-stroke bike, wasn't that same time?
Same kind of time frame, but I think that was this is more of a Repli racer than that was. Like this, I think this may have come before. I'm actually unsure. We have to do some research. Listeners, let us know, because we get corrected all the time. Some correctly, some incorrectly corrections. So anyway, 85 model. It came with an aluminum frame instead of a steel frame. It was oil and air cooled to save weight versus water cooled. They didn't want to add a lot of weight to the bike. So instead of going with all the modern tech, including water cooling, they decided to hold back a little bit to save some weight. But it still was a dual overhead cam 4-valve. And I still remember this bike when I was 8 years old. I remember the first time I saw this motorcycle. I was sitting in my dad's Ford Ranger in the jump seat in Oregon or Washington, crossing the Columbia River, and there was two of them parked at an overlook, and I was what is that?
You've told us the story. It's a great story.
Go on.
And I've never forgotten that exact moment in time, seeing that bike and seeing that kind of got me excited about sport bikes when I was 8 years old. My dad had a sport bike. He sport tourer, really. He had an FJ 1100 at the time, and maybe I think that's it. But I remember seeing that motorcycle and just being like, dude, that thing is crazy.
It just looked like a race bike on the street.
It totally looked like a race bike on the street. And then it had, those two round headlights that it had in the front of the fairing, just made it look crazy. Not only that it had all this fairing and it was all swoopy at the time, but then it also had these two big bug eyes. It
Mhm.
was wild. It was really wild.
It's a subdued, iconic style, like a little subdued, but still iconic. You know?
Yeah, I mean the style right now is pretty hot. Like you see a lot of customs that like hand built and one show and stuff. They're lamping on that fairing style right now. There's a lot of bikes that customs that are going back to that look because it's cool looking. It's very
people still love them. I mean, I was looking in the used market for the original, the 85, and they're still getting like $8,000 for those bikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a rough one probably.
Yeah, no, for sure not I mean, better than rough. Just an acceptable bike, but yeah, not a Concours or anything.
Yeah,
like
super cool.
So, a clean low mile one still a clean low mile. They don't fetch a ton of money. I last time I heard around $20,000 for a clean 86 low mileage cherry one. They don't really. It's not like they're not holding their value. They're triple the price what they were brand new, but they're not as expensive as you would think.
Yeah. I mean that's more money than when we're going to talk about the new one, the 2025/2011. So then it got some changes in 88. That's the famous slingshot model. And that's referring to the shape of the flat slide carbs. It was the first redesign on that bike. And it still kind of carried the same styling for the most part, but it was just updated. It was lighter, it was better, it was an improvement. And those slingshots are still very, very popular collectors bikes too. Maybe more so than the 85 model because of the name, I think, more than anything.
Yeah.
Like you don't really know, a lot of people don't call the 85 its nickname is the slab side, and not a lot of people go, oh, that's a slab side. They go, oh, that's a cool GSX-R, but when you see a slingshot you go, ooh, it's a slingshot. So I think that naming convention, that nickname, it got stuck for sure.
It was cool in that era when the sport manufacturers were putting those flat side carburetors on their up spec models. It's what a wild time. Remember the Ninja? Didn't you have one, a Ninja ZX-7RR with the flat side carbs?
Yeah, I had a 96 7RR with flat slides, and that thing, they had to run it like so lean to get it through emissions that the thing on a hot day wouldn't restart after you fired it up once, and then that was it. Like you could not restart it unless you did work on it. So, and I was too lazy to do the work on it, so I just dealt with it. Just made sure my lunches were longer and my stops, if I stopped somewhere, were longer.
Just rode it till it ran out of gas.
Yeah, or rode it till the tank was empty. There was no in between. So in 92, it got liquid cooling. It got inverted forks. It got the headlights inside the fairing body. It got like a cover over the headlights. Still dual headlights. But the U.S. market didn't get that bike until 93. So it was 92 for most of the world, and 93 for the U.S. was the next generation.
And that was the Ram Air?
No. Nope.
Oh, okay.
That actually came 4 years later. So we'll jump to that one next. But I want to say that generation was the first sport bike I ever rode. I was 14 and I rode it on my friend's block. His dad was a lawyer and got one as a payment for his services. And so they had this GSX-R in the garage, and we rode dirt bikes and stuff, and we were like, dude, let's break this thing out when his dad's not home. And dude, we were doing like hot laps up and down the street on the thing at like 14 years old in GSX-R. It was pretty fun.
Terrorizing the neighborhood.
Yes. Yeah. So, but
Giving
96
sport bike riders a bad name.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's the beginning of it right there.
Yeah. We were not good boys. That's for sure. On that motorcycle. I don't know why he never caught that the mileage counter was going up on the bike and no one was riding it. He didn't. So 96, Jeff, that's when we got Ram Air. S-Rad. Suzuki Ram Air Direct. S-Rad. So that was 1996. 98, it got fuel injection. And then 2011 is the latest gen that we all get to still enjoy today, but only in certain parts of the world. So it was one of the first bikes that came with ride modes. So SDMS, Suzuki Drive Mode Selection. So it was basically the A, B, and C power maps. But still, to this day, unchanged from 2011, you buy a 2025 GSX-R750, no ABS, no TC, no quick shifter. It is the last of the analog sport bikes. It's very, very much unchanged, and that's I think that's one of the reasons why, which we'll talk about in just a minute, is why it might still be kicking around. So it was discontinued almost all over the world in 2018, but the US still gets it today. And
discontinued because of emission reasons.
Yeah, emissions. Yeah. So Euro 5, that kind of stuff.
I
guess in Japan, I don't know if it was due to emissions or just reduced sales, but they stopped selling it in Japan. So there's only a few markets, the US being one of them, that still gets the bike today. And it's the same bike, exactly the same bike, same face, same everything, just the paint job changes every year. I mean, it even comes with the same, I think they're BTO1 tires, Bridgestone BTO1 tires that it did in 2011. Like still has those tires. They haven't even updated the tires, which is pretty wild.
If it ain't broke.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if you're broke, buy a GSX-R750.
I think they're expensive now.
Well, that's the thing. So we're gonna get into it. Yeah, we can get into the price here in a second. But I wanna ask you guys, why do you think it seems to be becoming a better choice now in 2025, maybe than it was back in 2011 and 12 and 18 and whatever? Why do you guys think that is?
Why is it a better choice?
Why is it a good choice? Yeah. Why is it good? Why is it? Why is it popular? Why are people still buying it? Like they're buying it because it is a good choice. Otherwise, Suzuki would have got rid of it.
Yeah. Well, for me, I could say I've ridden other tracks, but most of my track experience is out at Chuckwalla, and that bike is perfectly suited for that place because it feels like a 600. You know, it's nimble. Like the GSX-R600, but it has just a bit more grunt, you know.
Yeah, it slots in a nice category, you know, that 750cc category. You know, that used to be the popular superbike category, and it slowly waned, kind of like the 600 Super Sport has waned. But even though it waned, it didn't mean that wasn't a good, you know, powertrain configuration. You know, you have the nimbleness of a 600cc inline four, you know, less reciprocating mass of the crankshaft and the pistons. Yet you still have some torque, you know, more torque than a, you know, 600 inline four. So, but not so much power as a 1000. I mean, if you're a newer rider, 1000s can kind of be a handful, but realistically they're not anymore because most companies now have combined engine and throttle mode maps that allow you to change the power like a Game Boy. But, you know, it's just a nice little category it slots into.
I think that's kind of where I'm thinking too, is that like middleweight sport bikes are kind of back right now at the moment, right? You've got the new Panigale V2, you've got the YZF R9. You know, if you want to spend a little more, you can get the MV Agusta 800 F3. Like, and there's racing now. Like, super sport racing has gone from just being 600s to being through a range of bikes that are basically less than 1,000 cc's, and so people are still racing the GSX-R750 today, right?
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy thing. What is it? Super Sport? What's that class they have now?
Yeah. World Super Sport and Moto America Super Sport allow all kinds of weird mishmashes of engine configurations and cc's. You know, with some handicapping in places, but the GSX-R is one of the bikes that can be raced. A GSX-R600 could be raced there too. You know, so, but it's still around. And like you said, it's got tons of performance, but not too much power. Like they're 120 horsepower right now, which is a very nice sweet spot. And you look at the Panigale V2 and the YZF-R9, they're right there in that space too. I think the Panigale V2 might be 120 also. R9, I don't remember, Adam. You just wrote it.
Oh, it's it's the same. It's like 117 or something like that.
Yeah. So it's a very nice, happy place for horsepower on a sport bike. For me, especially being old and worn out and not willing to whack it to the stop everywhere. So,
and it sounds cool. It's got that, that signature Suzuki S-Rad inline four character. It sounds cool. It's got a nice intake roar. Exhaust notes nice behind the windscreen, but not so loud to, annoy your neighbors or other people sharing the road with you. And yeah, they're cool, and they're really well built. Like, those things, they're super old, but they're still quality machines, which probably is the reason why the MSRP is so high still.
Yeah, very much so. There's because it's been around for so long too, though, there's tons of parts and tons of knowledge on how to make them handle well, make more power, tuning, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's kind of the reason that the GSX-R1000 was successful for so long racing as well, as everyone raced them and everyone knew how to make them go fast. It was not a closely guarded secret anymore. Like, everyone can make their GSX-R go fast. And this is the same thing. There's so much stuff to put on that motorcycle because it's been around for so long. But let me ask you this, like, it's simple. We'll say analog because it only has ride modes. Is that a more pure experience, a better experience? Like, what's your take on the being so bare bones?
I think it's neat. I mean, the only thing I don't really like about that bike is just the styling. Like, honestly, if they just gave that bike a styling update and some LEDs, I mean, you can leave the powertrain alone, you can leave the chassis alone. Like, it's still a raw and visceral bike in a good way. Suzuki always does their homework with, the balance of the chassis and the suspension action and the power characteristics. So even though it doesn't have all those bells and whistles, it's still a dang easy bike to ride and a fun bike to ride. So,
yeah. Although I will say, I agree with you somewhat in the styling of it, but the colorway, that like electric blue colorway with the big Suzuki logo on the side, I think that Lincoln looks good. It looks sort of like the last MotoGP bike.
Yeah, every other couple of model years, they'll have some bold new graphics that I think look cool. Like, remember we were talking about the XR650 a couple episodes and how that old thing looks nice with the black wheels. And Suzuki gets it right every couple of years. They get it right with the colorways. But gosh, like, how cool would it be just if they updated the fairings just a little bit and some LED lights? Like, it'd be so cool.
Yeah, it still has a very, well, I would say 2010-ish front end on it. It's got like this weird kind of bulge right there at the headlight that it's kind of fun.
Kind of like what Honda was doing. Suzuki was doing it too, but remember, like, the Honda CBR of that era, like just those round surfaces that are, I mean, maybe back then it was cool, but looking at it now, it looks ucky,
Yeah, it doesn't. We're used to sharper styling now. With sharper edges, and I think that's where that's what makes it look dated. Is it looks like one of the Apple computers from the early 2000s. Those, like, the ones that had the colored back, the iMac. Everything was kind of like kind of bulbous and rounded over. That's where it was at. So I think it definitely needs maybe what's the Kawasaki styling, the
Sugoi. Yeah,
it needs some Sugoi on it. Absolutely needs a Sugoi touch on it, I think. So we've kind of talked about all the kind of like why it's cool and why people are still buying it, and it, like we said, it really comes down to it's lighter in weight, feels like a super bike, handles like a 600, it's analog, but the price is kind of up there
it's creeped up. Yeah, it's the MSRP. I wrote it down, and it's just over 13,000.
Yeah, $13,149.
I didn't check. I was curious what was that, since it's unchanged since 2011. I wonder what the 2011
Probably like right
MSRP
around
was.
11 grand,
Just-
I would have bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the
12 grand. 12 grand.
Well, I think it would be lower than that. I bet you it's in the 9 grand range for 2011.
Oh, wow. Well, according to Google, 2011 Suzuki GSX-R750 MSRP was 11.9.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was expensive, so it hasn't had that much creep.
Okay,
be
that's
honest.
awesome. Yeah,
A little over $1,000
yeah. It's an inflation fighter
in
That's
nearly
definitely-
15 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it went with the pace of inflation, it should be about 15K probably. So, good job, Suzuki. But that's still $700 more than an R9. That's all new design. An R9 is
Yeah.
12,499. It's way less. It's a 2.5 grand less than a Panigale V2. Panigale is basically 16K. And then if you want to get into superbike territory, if you jump up from there, then you're going to go in the 20K area. So it's not expensive, but it's not inexpensive, right?
Yeah. It's
I
in
think
its own category, very much like the engine size.
Yeah, just like the engine size. It's in its kind of own space, and Suzuki has found those niches where people just keep buying, so they keep making. So in terms of actual liking the bike, weigh in. Do you like it? Do you like riding it? Start with Adam.
I mean, it's been a while since I've ridden that bike, but I've ridden that bike a lot over the years, and yeah, they're awesome. I mean, they sound cool. They handle well. The engine's really flexible, whether you're lugging it at lower RPM for an inline four or whaling it up top. They're fun, awesome bikes, and they're great street bikes. The seat's crazy comfortable. The windscreen's nice and high. The ergonomics aren't crazy demanding. Yet you can still totally do track days on it and whale. It's going to be a more capable track day bike than an R9 or a Panigale V2 most likely, but it's still really good on the street. So I still like it, but just the styling is just so old to me. I just, those other bikes we just mentioned, they just look so much more modern. And they have the color TFTs. They have some of the bells and whistles.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you need the bells and whistles, but I mean, you're spending $13,149 on a bike with an old school analog dash. Like no one's going to want that. They want a color TFT. That's just the way people are, myself included. So I like it, but it's just too dated, But then again, like you said, there's so many aftermarket parts. And if you were looking for a motorcycle that you don't mind chucking down the road 3 times over again, you're going to find all the spare rear sets and spare wheels and spare all that stuff on eBay. And you're going to be able to fix that bike for a fraction of the cost what you would an R9 or a Panigale V2.
You could go poke around the Road
for
Racing
sure.
World offices and find full sets of fairings probably for $5.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I like it quite a bit too. I like it. Like I can ride it like a vet rider, just kind of, lug it out of the turns a little bit, much more than say like the 600. And, some tracks, 1000's a little much. So I really like the way that 750 slots in there.
Yeah, it's been more than a few years since I've ridden one, but I've always liked the handling of a GSX-R, especially 750. It's so much quicker to turn than the superbike, than the 1000, and it's got more grunt. So it kind of melds both worlds in a way that I think is pretty successful. But even the last time I rode it, it felt long in the tooth. For the same way that Adam was talking about, the styling, the switch gear, the dash, it's falling behind. And in some ways that's a good thing, like if you're one of those people that's like, I don't need the TC, I don't need that ABS, I don't need any of those rider aids. Well, this is the bike for you. Yeah. At the same time, some modernization, I think, is due for that bike. And it probably won't ever get it because it's only sold in the USA at this point. And
so,
it would need a lot, to get it to Euro 5 plus.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's a great, for the reasons you just said, it's a great track day bike because if you do drop it, it's going to be a lot cheaper to get it back on the road, or back
exactly.
on the, so
yeah, exactly.
Especially compared to those newer models, the Yamaha and the Ducati and stuff, it's going to cost a fortune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do you guys think that Suzuki will ever change it, update it, or is it just going to go like that until it fades away?
The updated DRZ 400S to the 4S gives me hope that it maybe it's on the horizon.
Yeah, nice one, Jeff. I of course hope for that, but it's unlikely, because if they did update the bodywork, well, now they're going to have to update the engine, and they're totally not going to want to update the engine, because updating the engine would be a, I don't know, $10 million project, probably even more.
It would be a ton of money, and they'd have to weigh out, like, if they could be profitable in 3 to 4 years of selling that bike, and sometimes that's tough in these certain things. But the resurgence of that middleweight sport bike popularity and all these other manufacturers coming out with bikes in that range again may spur them on to do it. Like, who knows? I'm hopeful as well.
Possibly, but there's also the 800 they have. I mean, there would be
but it's not the same thing. Like, we call the 800 R the GSX-R a sport bike, but it's not the same type of sport bike that the GSX-R is.
No, but
it's so much softer.
No, but if you created another, say they updated the GSX-R750, they're creating a model that would be cross-shop. They're a little bit of a competitor against themselves.
Well, probably not, because the 8R is, how much money is it? $8,000, I think. $8,000 or $9,000. This is $13.1 thousand. So this is already, you're not cross shopping those two bikes. There's a $5,000 gap to $4,000 gap in price. Like, it's not going to matter. The person that's going for that is not going to be going for the 8R. I think it's more, can it compete with the Panigale? Can it compete with especially the R9? I think that's the hot bike. Do they see it worth putting in the effort to go against that motorcycle or not? Or they just go, dude, people are going to go shopping for an R9. They're going to be sold out, and they're going to scoot over and buy a GSX-R750.
That's one way of looking at it, maybe. Yeah.
Well, I looked on Facebook Marketplace for GSX-R750. I've done it a number of times, but I looked at it today, and they're not free. They're not cheap. If you wanted something decent, you're still going to pay. Yep. So there's something up there propping up the used market.
You can still find like a 2020, like a 2012, 2013, 2014 for $8,000. I pretty clean, with 15,000 miles. I've seen them, Yeah.
I mean, used
market. Those things, speaking of miles, that bike will go 100,000 miles.
Yeah.
Usually, as long as you're taking care of it. But that's the other problem usually with a GSX-R versus some other brands, is they tend to lead a harder life. Just some of the buyers, they're younger, maybe they're less into maintenance. They ride them harder, they crash them more. There's a lot of them that go to the track and get tossed away. So if I was buying a used GSX-R, any CC, 600, 750, 1,000, I would be looking very carefully at every nut and bolt on that bike before I bought one.
Yeah, you gotta be careful for sure.
Yeah. But if you get one that's well taken care of and the person loved it and didn't hammer it, it'll run forever, like Adam said. It'll be a great bike. So, all right. Well, I think that's it about the GSX-R. It's forever stuck in my mind as one of the OG sport bikes, and I would still love to have a slab side at some point in my life. Probably won't happen, because I'm not going to buy one that I want to restore. And if I want a new one or a good one, they're going to be $20,000. So I guess I'll just keep staring at the poster in my bedroom.
And have those memories of the first two that you saw on the road.
First two, I still remember them parked side by side. It is the craziest thing. So and the headlights are the first thing that caught my attention. So,
Mhm.
what do we got to take away from this episode? First Repli Racer, it stood the test of time. It's 40 years old. It's been the same bike since 2011, and it's still around because it still sells. People still love it, and it has so many things going for it, despite being kind of long in the tooth technology-wise. So, and we don't really think it needs to change. Let's keep it the same, except for maybe some styling advances that Adam said. But
Something
under that
more
skin,
than bold new graphics.
under the skin, leave it the same. Just change the bodywork, and that's it. So, anyways, let us know what you think about the GSX-R750. Give us your thoughts on them. Tell us about the first time you saw a GSX-R750. Put it down in the comments. We appreciate the support. Thanks for listening. Please like, comment, and above all, please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.